definitely living in the last days of Earth's history. And more people are believing that. In fact, in the book of Revelation, the last book in the Bible, but the very first verse of the first chapter says that the book of Revelation is about things which must shortly come to pass. In fact, that phrase is even repeated in the last chapter of the book of Revelation. And my friends, this is good news. Why? Because it means that Jesus Christ is coming soon to take us home. And we here at the Paradise Church are committed to help people to be ready for the second coming of Jesus Christ. Would you like to be ready? Well, that is why we're so glad you could join us today. And now let's see what God has for us from His Word.
Happy Sabbath, everyone. I am so happy to be here with you today. I'm happy to see the kids that I used to have and how they've grown. Wow. It's unbelievable. Well, today we started out with Galatians 5. Fruits of the Spirit. How many were there? Almost 2 hands full minus 1 makes 9 fruits of the Spirit. But the Spirit that we're going to talk about today is faithfulness. Faithfulness is something that is very difficult to find anymore. As Judy and I have traveled all over the world, we've had the opportunity to visit different places and see many different things. But one of the places that was always of interest to us, and we visited 2 or 3 times, was the village of Pompeii in Italy. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have been there, at least some of you have been there. And you've taken a look at the devastation that that volcano of Vesuvius caused in 0075, 79, and what it did to that village. And you still see the remains of people that were burned by that volcanic explosion that took place. It killed people instantaneously. It did it with such force, it just blew them away practically. Imagine death by burning in just seconds. It has some interesting stories there, and one of them that's interesting to me was there's a body that was recovered, uncovered, whatever you want to say, of a soldier that was fully in his military uniform. He was still at his post when death overtook him. Now, it's been said that somebody failed to relieve him. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, and the person that said that doesn't know that for sure or not. But when everybody else was running and finding places to hide, places to get away from the volcano that was erupting, this soldier was still at his post. Now, I don't know about you, but I do know about me. If I was in the military and I saw a mountain starting to explode, I would start thinking less about my duties and more about my preservation. However, there are people in this world that are more oriented toward duty first. And if his duty was to guard that particular place, he held true till the end. Brothers and sisters, that's faithfulness to a job. That's faithfulness to a government. That's faithfulness to an extreme, I think. But you know, we serve a God that's that extreme, are we not? Is He not 100% faithful? He is, isn't He? But in today's society, I would challenge you to find somebody that is 100% faithful. I don't think it happens. I don't think it can happen except that God helps it to happen in your life. The good news is that the Spirit is always willing to make you faithful. He's always faithful to let you have those other fruits of the Spirit. But you have to be connected to Him to receive them. It isn't something you can work toward. It isn't something that you can say, I'm going to do tomorrow or today. It's something that only the Spirit can help you with. Hebrews 11, what is that chapter known for? The faith chapter. If you take a look in Hebrews 11, the first thing it says is that now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. It takes a lot of confidence in God to understand that aspect of faith. That you can have faith in something that's not seen. Verse 6 in Hebrews 11 says, "And without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to Him must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him." Has anybody seen God? Does anybody doubt that He exists? I would hope not. But that's our faith, isn't it? We have faith that what we're doing here today, what we do every day in our lives, the things that we say and we do make a difference because we want to see God and have everlasting life. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, built an ark. He built an ark when there were no boats. He built an ark where there were no waters to float boats on. It's amazing, isn't it? He didn't build just a small boat, he built a humongous boat. And the ridicule that took place from people that did not believe that what God says is going to happen is really going to happen. Sarah, who was told that she was going to have a child by faith, believed, even though her husband was well past his prime. Very few of us today could procreate when we're 90. Most of our wives, when they're 90, can't have children. But when God says something is going to happen, you best be prepared for what's going to happen. By faith, when Abraham tested in verse 17, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. That would give you some major anxiety, wouldn't it? You would need those steps that we watched a little earlier. Take the life of your own son. If you were to try to do that today, they have a place for you. It's called prison. They would send you away because you are mentally disturbed. Nobody wants to take the life of their child, do they? By faith, Moses' parents put him in a basket and put him in the river. Who in their right mind would do that? Oh, God told me to, or somebody told me to put my daughter in the Columbia River and just let her go. No. When God tells them something, they do it because they have faith. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after 7 days of people just walking around. How on earth does that happen? Blows your mind, doesn't it? Walk around for 7 days and then blow a trumpet and stomp your feet and shout, hooray, and the walls fall down. Almost all the walls. What walls were left standing? Rahab's wall, because she had faith that when the spies said they would keep her safe, they would keep her safe. Isn't it amazing what that little part of faithfulness will do for you? If only you exercise it. Now, we put our faith in people every day, don't we? We put our faith in doctors. We put our faith in the light switch, that when you turn a switch back there, something's going to happen. Something's going to come on or go off. If you go in the bathroom and push the little handle on the toilet, you have assurance that that toilet is going to flush. If it doesn't, you know what to do. Call help. But you know, our faithfulness is not always rewarded. You think about the people that get on an airplane, they have faith that it's going to make it to their next destination. However, we know that doesn't always happen. You know, when we were in Africa, my wife and I were driving to an appointment up country. And it's not like driving from here to Boulder City where you drive on really good roads and there's all kinds of things that are not on the road. But we were driving along, we were up country, and we come upon this girl in the middle of the road. Now, it's not strange to see people on the road in Africa, believe me. That's the one thing you have to watch out for, because that's the smoothest way to get someplace. But here was this little girl. She was laying in the middle of the road. So we stopped. And she was crying and she was holding her hand. And when my wife took her and picked her up and uncovered her hand, found out that her hand had been scraped right down to the tendons and ligaments. And we said, now, how did this little girl end up getting injured like this in the middle of the road? There wasn't, everything else wasn't scraped up. She was scraped, but not too terribly bad. And we found out that she'd been riding in the back of a truck. Now, in Africa where we lived, everybody rode in the back of a truck. They have benches across the backs of these trucks. So a person get on, pay his fare or her fare, another person would get on. It's always interesting in Africa that, unlike America, if there's a bus that comes by, you sit in this seat and somebody else sits just about as far away from you as they can. Somebody else gets on, they sit in the middle or some other corner. But in Africa, when one person got on the bus and sat on the bench, the next person came and sat right beside him on the bench, and the next person came and sat until that bench was absolutely full. And when I mean full, I mean full. There was no space between. Why? Africans like each other. They like to be close to each other. Unlike us, we like our personal space when we've been Americanized. That's why they put handles here on their seats, so you don't have to get too close to the next person. Anyway, we found out that the bus driver or the truck driver had started to lose his brakes going down a hill. And when that happened, everybody bailed out. They jump off the truck, because the next thing that happens is that when the truck driver finds out that his truck is going downhill and he can't stop it, he gets out. He's not faithful to his post. He abandons because he doesn't want to get killed. Everybody jumped off except this little girl who was scared to jump. And when she finally did figure out she had to jump, she landed on her hand and just scraped it unbelievably bad. It almost makes you gag when you see it. So we pick this little girl up. We don't see her mother, we don't see her brothers, we don't see her any family, we don't see anybody around except the truck over the edge of the embankment. We take this little girl, and my wife says, well, we need to take her to the doctor, and she needed to go to a doctor. But we also realized that in Africa, when a little girl got hurt, that's not such a big thing. If she dies, she dies. If she doesn't, she doesn't. So we took her to the nearest hospital that we found, and hospitals aren't like the hospitals we have around here, although this one wasn't too bad. We took her to the hospital, and we took her to the doctor and said, here's the problem. And he took a look at her and says, oh, that is bad. She could get infections. She could lose her life. We said, well, you're the doctor. You take care of this little girl and make sure that she gets the treatment that she needs, because I don't want her to lose her arm. My wife didn't want her to lose her arm. We didn't want her to lose her life. And the parents hopefully will come. So we left that girl in the doctor's care. That's a pretty good place to leave somebody for care, isn't it? In a doctor's care, in a hospital. 2 days later, my wife and I drove back. Nobody had even looked at this little girl. She still had the rags that we'd had to wrap with when we brought her in. Well, you know, a pastor really doesn't get too excited. But I got a little excited because we'd put her in the care of a doctor, offered to pay all her bills, and the doctors and the nurses had not even cleaned her up. So guess what I did next? Where's the doctor? And I'd hate to tell you that I didn't read him the riot act, but I did. Because I said, we brought this little girl in to receive treatment that you could give. We offered to pay for it, and you did nothing. You know what his comment was? I didn't think you would be back. She's just a little girl. See, here's a doctor that was not faithful to his calling. His calling is to treat the injured, to watch over people. They started working on the little girl while we were there, and then we left. I don't know how the story ended, okay? All I know is that when we left, the doctor was attending this little girl, and she was getting cleaned up. But I thought, that's a small thing. You have a job to be a doctor. People put their trust in you to do what is right. And you think nobody's going to come back and check on you. Well, you know, I didn't tell him that God was going to check on him. I should have. But I wasn't in a state of mind to do the right thing, I guess. But we all trust in people. And I think when we trust in people, one of the reasons we have depression and anxiety is for the very same reason, is that we can't trust people. Someplace along the line, we have learned not to trust one another. Which means that we're not trusting that God is going to do what He asks us to do. We're not going to trust Him to put our foot forward when He tells us to put our foot forward, because we have lost the trust that we need to be good Christians. Fortunately, like I said, we serve a God that's 100% faithful. If He was 99.9% faithful, that means He isn't 100% faithful. He'd let us down someplace. If you're a person that's interested in numbers, if airline pilots were 99.9% faithful, there'd be 2 unsafe landings in Chicago O'Hare every day. If our postal service was 99.9% efficient, that would mean that 16,000 pieces of mail get lost every hour. That means your Social Security check, people, isn't there. They've lost it. 22,000 checks go missing from an account. I shouldn't say it that way. That's not exact. 22,000 checks, the money is drawn from a wrong account every hour. So if you're missing money, you realize that our banking system is only at 99.9% still going to lose that much money for you every hour. 50 babies get dropped on the floor at a hospital every day. If our nurses were 99.9% capable of carrying a baby from birth to the crib. "500 incorrect surgeries every week. You go in for a knee replacement and they take your elbow. You go in for heart surgery and they take your appendix. You see, we live in an imperfect world where we really can't trust people even if they were operating at 99.9%. I would submit to you that a God of 100% is perfect. That no matter what you do, if you are faithful and trust in God, He is 100% capable every single time of making sure that you don't fall. You know, when we take a look and think about the things that we have, is there anything that is commonplace? Is your marriage commonplace? No, it's the most spectacular thing you can have. Having children, is that commonplace? No, that's spectacular too, isn't it? Everything that takes place, including the breath that we take, comes from God who takes care of each and every one of us. God doesn't forget that you need to breathe every hour. He doesn't forget that you need to breathe every second, that your heart needs to beat. He's 100% dependable. You know, as we go through life, our lives would be much easier if we practiced being faithful. If I was faithful to my wife in everything that I said I was going to do, she would be such a happy woman. But you know, I say I'm going to take out the garbage and I forget. I say I'm going to pick up milk at the grocery store and I forget. And by the time the weekend, she thinks that I've got Alzheimer's. But you know, God never forgets. And He looks down on us no matter who we are, in what position we are, in what status we are. And God looks down at us and says, I'm 100% faithful. All you have to do is trust in me. You know, there was a story about a little boy named Myron who was mentally retarded. Now, what do you expect out of somebody that's mentally retarded? Not a whole lot, do we? And back in the days when this story took place, most of those kids stayed at home because there wasn't places to keep them. Well, Myron had a green thumb, and he could make things grow. And because he couldn't find, you know, a job as a doctor, a lawyer, or go to school, he did what he could do. Myron is one of these people that when he saw a vacant lot, cleaned it up. For no reason. He just liked to see things clean. He'd plant flowers and he'd do stuff like that, make that vacant lot look nice. Some widow needed to have her lawn mowed. Somehow Myron was there to mow the lawn. Something needed to be done here, done there, wherever it was, it got done. But life wasn't easy for Myron, because you know that people that are different from you, different from me, stand out. And we tend to ridicule those kind of people. We tend to make things tough for them because they're different than us and they don't think like us and they can't achieve the same things that we achieve. However, Myron didn't care much when the boys teased him, when people said unkind things. He just went on about doing his things. Well, he only lived to be about 20 years old. They had a funeral for him in this little community. And you know, it's not like our funerals once in a while where you have trouble getting people to attend. Everybody in the community attended. Everybody that was from that community came back and attended that funeral. It was the biggest funeral that that community had ever had for a little guy that just went about doing whatever he could to make life easy for the people around him. You see, Myron was faithful to everyone. He was faithful to his calling to do what he could do to relieve the suffering, the anxiety, the needs of the people around him at his level. And you know, I think about a story like that and it just humbles me, because there are so many things that I could do that I don't do because I think they're beneath me. Because I think I don't have time to do that. I got more important things to do. But you know, God says, be faithful to me. And I will give you faithfulness. I will help you be faithful to others, to do whatever we can do to eliminate the suffering, the anxiety, the depression, the widow, the homeless, whatever it is. We can be faithful to a calling that God wants us to do what we can do to alleviate suffering in this world. You're all familiar with Matthew 25:14 through 30. It's a parable of the talents, where he gave one guy 5 bags of gold, he gave another guy 2 bags of gold, and he gave another guy 1 bag of gold. Today, that probably wouldn't happen, because the guy with 5 bags of gold would abscond with those bags. But in this story in the Bible, what happened? The guy with 5 bags made 5 more bags for his master. He was faithful to his post. The guy with 2 bags made 2 more bags of gold for his master. Which one did not get rewarded? The guy with 1 who hid it because he didn't want to share and he didn't want to lose it, and he knew that he better just keep track of his 1 bag. And he gave it back, and the master called him a wicked servant. God has made available to you 9 fruits of the Spirit. We need to claim all 9 of those fruits, do we not? We especially need to claim faithfulness, because unless we're faithful to one another and we're faithful to God, I don't think we can get the others, because they're all intertwined. My prayer for each of you today is to be faithful in your position, whatever it is. Faithful as a child, faithful as a parent, faithful as a spouse, faithful as an employee, faithful as a child of God, because we have such great responsibility. May the Lord bless you as you remain faithful to getting to know God on a personal basis. May God bless you as you remain faithful to doing the best that you can do wherever you're at and whoever you are. Because that's all God asks of us. He doesn't ask us to be 100%. He's 100%. He asks us to do what we can do, and He makes up the percentages that we're missing because we're faithful to Him. Amen.
I hope you enjoyed the biblical presentation that you just experienced. It's our intention here at the Paradise Seventh-day Adventist Church of making the Bible, God's Word, the center of our lives, and we invite you to do the very same thing. For there's nothing more powerful or important in these last days than the Word of God. So thank you for joining us today. And if you're ever in the neighborhood, we invite you to come and to join us for worship on any Sabbath. May God richly bless you and your family.